night, residents of St. Patrick's, Valley Hill, and surrounding areas. This morning, I decided to take my usual morning walk, trying to lose some of the Christmas fat from all the macaroni pie, etc. And I walked from Sunbury towards Six Roads, through Train Road, and back to Sunbury. On that walk, I saw in the gutter a BLP hat. And I took it up and put it where I thought it belonged, in the nearest garbage bin. And the reason I start with that tonight is because a friend of mine, who is a strong BLP supporter, by the way, but we are mature enough that we can disagree politically and be friends, posted on Facebook a viable complaint about gutter politics. And I wholeheartedly agree with him that gutter politics should be a thing of the past. The reason I want to start with that is because very quickly, a number of supporters of that side were quite quick to jump on the bandwagon, castigating anyone from this side who they thought crossed the line. Because there is a line between being humorous and being vulgar, nasty, and insulting. And I agree with them that we shouldn't cross that line. But what bothered me as well is the hypocrisy of some of these people. During the last election, Dwight Sutherland referred to Esther Bayer, Dr. Esther Bayer, as a nanny goat. And they didn't have a problem with that. Also, we had Liz Thompson talk negatively about Cammie Tudor. And they had no problem with that. They also had, during the last election, or a previous election, Kerry Simmons talk about rat boxy fellows. They didn't have a problem with that. When Noel Lynch got on a platform and said he knew David Thompson going to hell and that he was a brute, they didn't have a problem with that. You see, what they have a problem with is anyone who is willing to call out any member of the other side for inappropriate behavior. And I will admit that I am not a fan of gutter politics. I never was, I never will be. When Ms. Motley referred to Clyde Maskell as Malik only with teeth, they didn't have a problem with that. When Owen Arthur described a female member of his side as a dilapidated chattel house on prime real estate, they didn't have a problem with that. But it appears that they believe that one side has the right to throw stones. I will admit that there have been some comments on both sides in this election that were better left unsaid. But in all my years, I have only heard one politician come out and offer an apology for any offense in anything that she said. And that young lady is the DLP candidate for St. George South. You see, they believe that they can do as they please, say as they please, act as they please, and we got to just take it. They got upset with the nurses for marching. But they don't remember, or choose not to remember, that it was that side who led a march, she of many scars and stains, put on a white and scarf, and walked with not just the union, but also the employers of the private sector in a march. And what were they protesting? What was deemed the solid waste tax? A tax that added 1%, just under 1%, to the improved value of your land tax. And I distinctly remember reading that speech. And she of many scarves and stains said Barbadians were overtaxed, but they had the solution. They were going to put a tax on water. And to her credit, this is what she did. She replaced the solid waste tax with a garbage and sewage tax on your water bill. That tax was rated at $1.50 a day. And if you take $1.50 and multiply it by 365, one gets $547.50 per year. And what does that mean for the average working class Barbadian? Because a lot of people haven't really grasped this. If you owned a $250,000 property, a $300,000 property, or a $350,000 property, you were asked to pay $250 per year towards the same tax. But if you lived in a $1 million mansion, you would have been asked at the time to pay just under $1,000 a year. So what that means is that the wealthy people that had a $1 million house got a $500 concession in tax, well, those of us that have smaller homes got a 100% increase in tax. And then they come and tell you about shared sacrifice. Shared sacrifice, my royal red truck. You see, that is what they believe as equitable taxation. Concessions for those at the top and asking the ones at the bottom to pay more. This administration that was duly elected to mismanage this country's affairs took themselves and created what they call the BERT program. And when I finish explaining to you what this BERT program did, you all would agree that BERT belonged on Sesame Street. Because what they did was take government bonds and treasury notes that many pensioners, in fact, one lady today said as far as she was concerned, they stole her money. They took the interest rates from anywhere between 3.5% to 7.5%, depending on the bond and treasury note that one had obtained, and took it down to 1%. The same rate that you would get if the money was in the bank, but you can't get your money because they have now extended when these bonds will mature. Yes, in some instances, pensioners were able to get back their money that they invested in government paper with small amounts on a monthly basis. But you know that when they were paying back that amount, they were giving no interest on that bond. And what was the effect of that? Government paper prior to 2018 was considered good collateral. You could go to any lending institution and use that government paper as collateral. After they decimated the bonds, you could not take that bond to a bank or any lending institution as collateral. And I know this from personal experience. But not only did it affect us, the individuals, or people, especially those pensioners that were dependent on that interest for the little extra income to fix the house, whatever other needs may arise. What it did was affect the National Insurance Scheme. Remember, the National Insurance Scheme, one of their main sources of expanding revenue was investment in government paper. Because the contributions that we make alone cannot support the National Insurance Scheme. What it does is invest in other things so that down the road we can get our pensions. So when they did that, what they essentially did was put immense pressure on the National Insurance Scheme. And speaking of bonds, in 1991, the Right Honorable Sir Henry Ford is quoted as saying that paying debt owed by government with government bonds is illegal and immoral. If it was illegal or wrong back in 1991, it can't be right now. And just recently, they went to Parliament, where, of course, we all know they are largely unopposed, and now want to pay government debt with government bonds. A government bond that has 0% interest. An IOU for an IOU. That if we have a natural disaster, that repayment would be extended for another 2 years. How could that be fair? Unless, if you owe the government money, you can walk into the BRA and hand them back the same government bond and tell them hold that in exchange for payment. Because if they're going to pay you with government bonds, they're making government bonds legal tender. And they brag about the BERT program being a success because what that did with the bonds is reduce the local debt. Meanwhile, between 2018 and the end of 2019, our foreign debt has doubled. If you want to get an idea how important that is and the significance of that, every child learning arithmetic knows the old adage, if you borrow, you have to pay back. Except when it is money, you have to pay back with interest. And the other thing is, if you borrow in US dollars, you have to pay back in US dollars. If you borrowed on the local markets through government bonds, you borrowed in Barbadian dollars, and you paid back in Barbados dollars. Now, if you want to get an idea of how important that is, imagine you borrow some money from your mother or your father to buy a car, computer, whatever. But things a little tight one month, and you could go and say, well, mom, dad, auntie, grandma, whoever, things a little tight this month. I had to pay the car insurance, or I had to pay for some other thing. Mommy, daddy, granny ain't gonna take up the car because you have borrowed within a household. But when you go and borrow that money from the bank and you don't have that money to pay the bank when the month comes, very shortly you will come outside in the morning and you will find that the car is gone. And ladies and gentlemen, the foreign debt in Barbados has continued to climb at a rate never seen before. And they have borrowed this money primarily to say that they have higher foreign reserves. You have higher foreign reserves, but you haven't earned it. If I lend you $10 and tell you you're going to pay me back $12, but you had $3, When you don't pay me back, you only got $1. That is how it works. So, yes, according to the central bank figures, foreign reserves are 15 weeks of cover. But we have borrowed 14 and a half weeks. And we have to pay that back, not in Barbados dollars, but we have to pay it back in foreign currency. And it don't take a genius to do the math to understand how that come about. You see, we have earned over the last 2 years, barely due to COVID, I will admit, less foreign currency. We have spent more foreign currency, but we got more than we ever had before. And the reason we got it is because it ain't ours. It is borrowed money. And when you borrow, you have to pay back with interest. They ain't giving you the money for nothing. And remember this too. The only time that Barbados ever defaulted on a loan payment was under this BLP administration. We always met our debt requirements up until 2018, after the last general election. But they would like to believe, or have you believe, that that was the fault of the previous administration. The previous administration went all them years and then default, but them default. And if you want an idea of what the foreign debt is like, right now, as we speak, Barbados government has borrowed $850 million from the IMF. And when the Barbados government owes the IMF, we owe the IMF. All of us owe the IMF. And it is your children, your grandchildren, that can go out to pay it back. It is one of children and grandchildren that will have to pay it back. Not mine. I ain't got none. That ship done sailed, signed, the got fish to be through it. Or according to my good friend, I too old to change diapers. But it's your children that will have to face that. And I suspect that we are yet to find out where we are heading. Because while she of many scarves was parading on the world stage, she neglected, I don't know if it was willful or if it was purely because she didn't have the time to do it. Of course, she also has the junior ministers of finance that could have prepared it. But we have not yet got a budget for 2021. We got the estimates, but we did not get a budget. And this is the same woman that in June of 2010, or thereabouts, complained that the David Thompson administration had not presented a budget yet that year. And Mr. Thompson, at the time, as we know, was engaged in a personal battle with pancreatic cancer. So it was bad for us to not have a budget by June But for some reason, they believe that it is okay to not have one this year, well, for last year, and that is probably because they don't want to reveal what the government's revenue and expenditure and how they intend to tackle it are. Going to be going forward. And yet, we know we have this loan with the IMF, but we do not know what are the conditions, what does the IMF expect from us. Meanwhile, the cost of living continues to rise at an alarming rate. And we have a man like Dr. Jerome Walker, who I will admit this, was a man that I have a lot of respect for. I think he made a great effort on behalf of this country whenever he could. But when they were debating the bonds, I heard on the news, and I'm not going to try to quote him exactly, but he said something to the effect, he don't see what the problem was, that people paying the bills anyhow, all like no. He does not realize that for a lot of us, we owe Tom, Dick, Harry, the mother, the sister, the grandfather, to try and pay bills. That some months we trying to figure out if to pay the water bill or the light bill, the phone bill, or buy a top-up. But that doesn't affect him. And that I thought was very disappointing. I think it is disappointing that we have nurses marching for their pay. When the other day they were heroes, and now they're being treated as zeros. And instead of paying them, what do? They want to give you a little dollar with a little pretty symbol in the center to glow in the dark as a sign of appreciation. You know how much of them it takes to pay a light bill? Well, no, all right. I am not going to get into what Dr. Eswick has done throughout the years as a member of Parliament for St. Philip West. I think his record speaks for itself. But I want to remind people that in the 3.5 years since the last general election, he never left St. Philip West. And I hope that come January 19th, he will be returned as the representative. And that is why I want to talk about representation a little bit tonight. You see, as I drove down from Sunbury, I went down to Haggard Hall today, and I noticed that along the wall, everywhere along the road, there was a poster for the candidate in the various constituencies, and above that poster was a picture of you-know-who. And it makes me wonder, is it that the candidates, and I don't know Ms. McConney at all, I've never seen her except pictures on a pole. I don't know Dwight Sutherland. I've met him on one occasion, I think, or two. See his picture on the pole, the woman picture above hers. Went a little further down the road, and it was Santa Bradshaw, and that one picture above hers. And I wonder to myself, why is that? Is it that she believes or recognizes that the candidates without her are nothing? Or is it that she believes that she has to be up front and center throughout the campaign? And then I looked at their last campaign strategy, and it said, Mia cares. And this campaign is safer with Mia. Not with the Barbados Labour Party. It is not about what the Barbados Labour Party can or will do. She has made the last campaign and this campaign all about her. And I think that is because she knows that the likes of Miss McConney, Dwight Sutherland, the one that running against Mr. Lashley, Dr. Brown, Indar, where is he now? None of them can stand on their own 2 feet without her. I don't believe that when you vote for one of those that I've just mentioned, that you voted for her, you voted for them. And they have to defend you in the constituency. And that brings me to Mr. Griffith in St. John. And I know this may not directly affect you all, but I want you all to understand the type of representation that those candidates and those representatives have done. In 2019 and throughout 2020, St. John struggled with water to the point that I would get my pickup, fill 2 drums with water at my house in Sunbury, drive to St. John, and then give water, fill the water troughs for my girlfriend's horses and animals from water in St. Philip. And I remember distinctly one night the water tank by her house, which was supposed to be filled by the truck, didn't come. And we had drums in the back of my truck driving around the place looking for water. The last time I did anything like that was in 1987 through 88 when I was a student in Guyana. And at no point during that time did Charles Griffith and Picky Teat in the House of Parliament agitate for the residents of St. John. I know he has the audacity and the gall to come back and say, give he a vote. Listen, in 2018, when I was vexed with the dams, rightly or wrongly so, when I was vexed, I can't determine if it was right or wrong to be vexed. You all have to know. And when I stayed home, it was the lowest turnout at the polls in percentage-wise of the electorate in Barbados in our history, just about 51%. So listen to me now. Don't make that mistake again. Come out in your numbers. Get out there and vote. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Get out there and vote for whichever candidate you believe will represent your interests. I believe that the candidate that will represent your interests best in St. Philip West, the right pick, Dr. Esmith. That is what I believe. I believe that if you are from St. Philip South, the man up there, Mr. Neil Marshall, is the choice to make. I believe that in St. Philip North, the correct choice will be Mr. Michael Ashley. I believe in St. John that the right choice will be Andrea Worrell. That is my belief. And I believe that if you all want to have a bright and prosperous Barbados, a Barbados where we are all valued not only as an ex, but as human beings, that is what you have to do. And I want to take a few minutes to touch on crime. You see, like most people, when I heard of the gun violence throughout the island, 2018 and 2019 especially, because COVID, believe it or not, kind of affected the gun violence. But I stayed away from thinking too much about it because I said, you know, that's the bad boys getting into trouble. And then in 2018, towards the end of June, early July, I happened to be in Sheraton Mall food court having lunch with my significant other when gunshots rang out. And for the first time in my life, I was running in fear. And I remember being so shaken up that I left Sheraton, and me and my girlfriend went to my old lady's house just up the road. And I had to hit 2 pirates to settle the nerves. And when the Attorney General was tasked and tackled on the matter of gun violence, and I'm not trying to quote him, but he said something to the effect that he ain't buying a gun or sending a body to shoot nobody. You see, that is the problem I have. Then he and she of many scars and saints said that the Dems were making gun violence a political issue. But I can clearly recall she and the same guy, Attorney General, she and Dale Marshall were calling for the removal of Adriel Brathwaite as Attorney General over the same issue. And when they were making that call, we were not anywhere close to 50 murders a year. Do you all realize that in 2019, we had 49 murders in Barbados? And I would say kudos to the police. They solved most, if not all of them. But we had 49 murders. And I have to say, unfortunately, COVID has seemed to do a better job of reducing the murder rate than the Attorney General, because with the curfews, the bans, you can't go nowhere, and the less break-ins and more people home, it seems that the murder rate came down. But I don't believe that Dale Marshall had one thing to do with that. And his only comment is he ain't sending nobody to shoot nobody. But y'all remember an incident where he was going for his gun? Anyway, I'm sure it's a legal firearm. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have choices to make. I choose to come out here tonight because there are a lot of things that need to be said, highlighted, and broken down so that we understand where we are, how we got here, and where we are going. And I have some ideas that I will try to share with Drs. Estwick and others. And I am not afraid to say them. I would like to see the move towards a green Barbados. I would like to see the removal of the foreign exchange tax on credit card purchases abroad. Because as a small business, where you have to bring in things that adds on another 2% to your costs, and there's only so much any small business can observe. I would like to see duty-free concessions for electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles so that they're more competitive to buy. I would like to see, over the course of the next 5 years, that we start to develop a plan and a plant to repurpose, recycle, and reuse the same batteries that power these electric and hybrid vehicles. And as I was talking to a police officer tonight, I would like to see a Scared Straight program. You see, I heard Mr. Abrams, Minister of Leaks, say he would like to see a program within the prison. I would like to see a program that stops your young men and women from going to prison. And I am not just saying it, I am doing it. And I am not trying to toot my own horn. But prior to COVID-19 striking Barbados shores, and if you don't believe me, you can call the Dodds Industrial School. But every Friday, I went out there and spent an hour of my time with the boys out there. And we talked mainly about animals, but then we moved on to sports, especially horse racing, because there are a couple of boys out there that love that sport. And we talked about life in general. And I asked them if they thought a program that I outlined, where when you see these youngsters going into the wrong paths, that if they were exposed to the consequences of that path from an early age, if it would have worked for them. And every single one of them said yes. Every single one of them said that they would have benefited from that exposure. But they are worried that when they leave the industrial school, that they will be branded as criminals. And I had to tell them, we all make mistakes. It does not define who you are or what you can do. And I always tell them, I remember telling the story of Don King, the boxing promoter, who said he went to prison armed with a pea shooter and came out armed with a machine gun. And I want them to understand that. Do not serve time, make time serve them. And thankfully, on Christmas Eve day, I went to deliver a present for the boys. And every single one that I met said that they are making a change and they now feel empowered to do better. And that is what the Democratic Labour Party has always done, empowered to make those at the bottom do better. We did it with health care. We did it with education. We did it with creating job opportunities that prior to our independence and shortly after were not available to the average working class Barbadian. Because I can remember when the only job they had in the bank for certain people was messenger and gardener. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being a messenger or being a gardener, an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. But don't ever believe that the Barbados Labour Party supported any of those things. They opposed the Barbados Community College. They opposed universal free education. They opposed the QEH building. They opposed everything that gave us the opportunities to rise and go forward. And now they want to jump up and beat their chest talking about what they have done. And I ask you to look at the record in housing. It is only now when they realize that I'm pretty sure they would have known that they were going to call election early, that they recognize the need for low-income housing. So they, once again, neglecting home drums, get these houses from China. These houses, from what I understand, cost $200,000 per unit. And if you go down there just past Coral Ridge, heading towards St. David's, there is a housing development on the left-hand side where they've just put in that little confusion of a roundabout. And there are houses down there selling at $184,000. And they had to put in the roadworks, the electricity, the water. And if they could provide a house for $184,000 locally, after doing all that road work and water work and electrical work, drainage and so on, it is obvious that they could provide housing through government funding for less than $200,000. But when you attack Chinese money, I guess you go attack Chinese houses. And apparently, and I am not going to say that I know this for a fact, I can tell you this, what I hear. So if I am wrong, forgive me. This is only what I hear. I get it through the grapevine. Because things have a way of dropping off of trucks when they come around that corner by Sunbury Plantation. That the houses were designed to withstand a number 7 on the Richter scale earthquake, but they're not sure about a Category 1 hurricane, and we live in a hurricane belt. Ladies and gentlemen, home drums beat first. And I want you all to send a strong message to those red-wearing, dishonest, untrustworthy group led by she of many scarves and many saints on January 19th by giving Dr. David Eswick your ex from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I want to leave you with one more thing, because I talked about her scarves and saints, and I want to touch on something. And if you doubt me, you could ask my friend up the road there, Lyndon. I am not saying that she is responsible, but sometimes life is stranger than fiction. A certain gentleman was so excited after the last election, big BLP supporter, probably a member, that he named a horse Stay the Course, one of her sayings. And it broke her foot in the first race it ran. But still, the man went on and purchased another horse, and he named it after another one of her sayings. She said, "Give me the vote and watch me." That was too long, so he named the horse, "Give me your X and watch me." And that when I met the racetrack. And I had to warn him, if he named another horse like that, I can call the RSPCA for him. So ladies and gentlemen, they come back with a steady course. But listen, remember, staying the course only works if the course is the correct course. So I'm asking you to deviate from that course, and of course, place your X for the right pick, Dr. David Eswick. Good night.
Lord.
I know Dr. Eswick from time a little boy. His family, everything, he was a good family. He come along poor, but he had pride. And from small, he always liked people.
The doc is my man for years. Always was, always will be. You can go to the doc for anything. He'll be there for you.
Yes, I want Dr. Eswick to get back in, because he was always nice to us when he was in, not we alone, the whole neighborhood. So he deserved back his seat that he was being robbed off.
You know that. But otherwise, he's good. I know he become a man and doctor. He help people. Also know he's a politician. He help people more.
Because the last gentleman that was running, he never went to nobody's house. No, he never walked around to let you know that he's running. No, nothing like that. So Dr. Eswick deserved back his seat.
And vote X for David Eswick. I telling everybody, it is Eswick, more Eswick, frontward Eswick, and back Eswick.
Vote for the doc. He is the man for you.
Always for you and always for us. That is enough.
Biggity. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Make way for the people's champ, the only one in Philip West one. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. St. Philip people know this is true. Eswick always for you. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. In transport and water, agriculture, economic affairs.
Gentlemen, if you give me a second, I want to pull up something on my phone. Okay. Let me say it is indeed a pleasure to come to St. Patrick's on this very ground which I've spoken on many occasions. So coming here in support of Dr. David Eswick is like indeed coming home. This address tonight is indeed motivated in part by the contents of an article which appeared in the newspaper And the article is entitled, Mayor Rejects Despot Talk, who they're calling despotic. Of course, the contents of the article seeming to suggest that the Prime Minister is rubbishing Mr. Arthur's categorization of herself in that famous interview at the foot of the steps of Parliament when Mr. Arthur was interviewed by Peter Thorne on the occasion of the dismissal of Dr. Maria Agard from the Barbados Labour Party. But before I get on to the term used by Mr. Arthur, the late Owen Arthur, if it is indeed appropriate for the Prime Minister, who was indeed the leader of the opposition at the time, just let me respond to another issue. And I must tear the gloves off tonight and for the rest of the campaign. And I am reading from the article in the newspaper today because some of the comments in here are attributed to myself. If they were truthful, of course I won't mind. But I have not come to public life with a philosophy of to stop poor people from being poor and spending many, many years in pursuit of reaching out to the less fortunate, and through dint of hard work and cooperation from my colleagues previously, bringing material improvements in the lives of the less fortunate. But I didn't come to public life for anybody, irrespective of the office they hold, to seek to tell untruths about myself. And I don't need any cooperation, any assistance at all in defending myself against anything that has been said by anybody, irrespective of who it is. I don't need any assistance in setting the public record straight and indeed asking the person who makes these statements to be bold enough and honest enough to set the public record straight as well. And I quote, Motley also charged that the DLP was using disgruntled BLP members to propel its election campaign. Now, I don't know who else was a member of the Barbados Labour Party who is speaking in a very prominent way in the St. Philip constituencies for the DLP and in support of the DLP candidates in St. Philip, all of whom are very well known to me, and we had a very cordial relationship even when I was a member of the Barbados Labour Party. No name was mentioned besides disgruntled members to propel the campaign of the DLP. And there's a quotation which goes as follows. You have a bunch of disgruntled BLP supporters and friends who want to get vexed with Mayor Motley. If you want to get vexed with me, I am accustomed to the cursing. I am accustomed to the fighting, but do not get tied up and believe that Anthony Wood on a DLP platform all of a sudden is because Anthony Wood subscribed to Verla de Pisa's leadership or the philosophy of the Democratic Labour Party. And further down, and I read, I am not going to agree that because somebody wants an ambassador position or a minister position that was clearly not available to them, and you want to hold me and this party to ransom. There is a limit to what we can do and will do. And I say to you tonight that if the price of doing the right thing is losing a few, well, then let me do the right thing in the name of the people of this country, she said to loud applause from supporters gathered. Ladies and gentlemen, I take these comments extremely seriously. I cannot be termed a disgruntled BLP member because I had the foresight and I have the very good reasons for submitting a letter of resignation from the Barbados Labour Party on the 26th of June 2020. And I think it really is high time that the members of the Barbados Labour Party, starting with the leader of the Barbados Labour Party, that they get over the fact that I am no longer a member of the Barbados Labour Party. That was my choice, and I have exercised that option to leave the Barbados Labour Party. So to continue to give the impression that I could be some disgruntled BLP member, I left the BLP and I submitted reasons in a letter for resigning from the Barbados Labour Party. And the idea of insinuating that it had something to do with me wanting to be an ambassador or me wanting to be a minister, my letter of resignation spoke directly to the reasons I resigned from the Barbados Labour Party. And those reasons were indeed written in a summary form. And for the avoidance of doubt, because you know, some people are allowed to make statements in this country and feel that they can get away with it. But they wouldn't be allowed to get away with it if untruths are being spoken about this Anthony Wood. So let me repeat, for the avoidance of doubt and for the benefit of those who did not hear what was contained in my letter of resignation from the Barbados Labour Party, dated the 26th of June 2020. I wrote a letter to Senator Kay McConney, who happens to be the Barbados Labour Party's candidate for this constituency. I also copied the letter to Senator Dr. Jerome Walker, who is still the General Secretary of the Barbados Labour Party. And I quote, "Dear Ms. McConney, I write to inform you of my resignation from the Barbados Labour Party. This action is due to the following reasons. First, my concern with certain aspects of the governance of the country by the ruling Barbados Labour Party administration. Second, it is glaring that the administration has failed to honor fundamental promises made to the electorate and contained in the 2018 election manifesto, particularly relating to the stamping out of corruption. Such inaction on this core issue, which was central to the party's campaign in the general election, is a source of great disappointment and embarrassment for many Barbadians and myself. Finally, my principles and good conscience make it impossible for me to maintain membership of the same political institution as Mr. Indarweer, an individual who I have disassociated myself from and withdrawn my support for via a public notice on May the 24th, 2000. I've come here, as I said, to put these facts into the public record, and I've also come here to ask Ms. Motley I still consider her some sort of a friend of mine. But she to also put the public record correct with regard to why my conscience and my principles forced me to leave the Barbados Labour Party. As I said, no name was mentioned in the paragraph, and conveniently so, but the only high-flying former member of the BLP, not a disgruntled member of the BLP, a former member of the BLP, 2 years leaving the institution, comes up on the 25th of June this year. And in previous discussions before he left, none of those discussions centered on any request initiated by myself for any job within Barbados, overseas, coming from my end to the Prime Minister, Mayor Motley. I have never and will never ask any politician, let alone Prime Minister Motley, for any job anywhere. The last occasion that happened is when I left the university on the urging of Mr. Arthur and the constituents of St. Philip South back in late 1998. On that occasion, my first and foremost task was indeed to improve the lives of those living in St. Philip South with an express focus on stopping poor people from being poor in St. Philip South, elsewhere in Barbados, and anything after that would have been a bonus for my participation in elective politics and helping to shape public policy. Mr. Arthur saw enough talents in myself to ensure that I became a member of his cabinet, but never then did I even ask Mr. Arthur for any position within his cabinet, within the government. Never. It would be a nonsense. And it would be a colossal waste of the investments that were made in myself in education. For me to stoop to the level, having studied so hard here, having gone to Cambridge University, United Kingdom, and studied so hard to come back here and to submit myself to Prime Minister Motley in search of a job. I have come here to put the public record straight. And I hope that she will be decent enough to apologize, not to me, because I don't care about those things, to apologize to the Barbadian public and those members of the BLP who responded with loud applause, apologize to them for telling a lie on someone who served the Barbados Labour Party so well and who intends to continue to take the bigger picture of persons living in Barbados and their circumstances. I take this thing extremely serious. You can make fun at who you want to make fun at, but not to be making fun at myself just because I had a reason to leave the Barbados Labour Party and to outline in very specific terms some of the reasons why I had no choice but to leave the Barbados Labour Party. But this subject will stay with me until this election is over, or until Ms. Motley is decent enough to come and give me a public apology for seeking to put this lie and get it ahead of herself and ahead of me, and then I have problems to pull it back. And let me summarize. I have never, ever asked Ms. Motley for any job, and I will never, ever ask any Prime Minister, any politician in Barbados for any job. I am comfortable enough with myself. I'm comfortable enough with my family circumstances, and we shall not stoop to the depth that others may have gone already, and many others want to go in order to be looked after by Ms. Motley or whoever is the leader of any political party or whoever may be holding high office in Barbados. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Motley would have been better served by not even responding to the characterization Arthur gave of her back in 2013. She ought to have left it alone, because her behavior since coming to office on May the 24th, 2018, and the high-handedness within which this country was ruled. It wasn't governed, it was ruled. Because she has extended, drop an iron fist envelope around the country. And it is hurtful. It is hurtful because we have seen prime ministers with many leadership styles. But the one leadership style that we have never, ever seen, not even in Tom Adams' days, not even in the Right Excellent Earl Barr days, as confident and as dominant the personalities that they had, one could never say that they were despotic. Fernand Stewart was on the other extreme. He had a decentralized approach to leadership which did not allow him to take enough charge over his cabinet. Mr. Arthur was somewhere in the middle, which was the happy medium. He allowed us to express ourselves in and out of the cabinet room, but he also knew when to intervene in order to bring things back under control. To go to the length to suggest to Barbadians that something that they already know about despotic leadership, you have to be careful. You have to be careful when someone takes the occasion of the launch of a manifesto, having been quiet for 8 years, almost 8 years since Mr. Arthur gave her that characterization. She let it slip, she let it slip, she let it slip. But something must be wrong. That on the 8th anniversary, virtually, of that interview, all of a sudden, the Prime Minister thinks she must come off the ropes now and try to rubbish the characterization. Something must be wrong. And something else must be wrong if in the article in which she does it, she mentions my name and calls me a disgruntled BLP supporter. A man who resigned from the party, as I said, on the 26th of June 2020. With good reason. But I have decided to do a little research on this concept of despotic leadership. And I'm going to give you esteemed researchers in the area of leadership giving us definitions of despotic leadership. The Who in Den Hartog, 2009, defined despotic leadership as a leader's tendency to engage in authoritarian and dominant behavior in pursuit of self-interest, self-aggrandizement, and exploitation of subordinates. Schilling, writing in 2009, defines despotic leaders. Note that despotic leaders want unquestioned submission from their subordinates and use demanding and controlling mechanisms to manipulate and exploit their subordinates for personal gain, regardless of their subordinates' needs and concerns. Thus, despotic leaders indulge in self-serving and morally corrupt behavior. I am glad this meeting is being streamed. And I asked if the meeting was being streamed before I decided to go on this subject tonight. Because this message, in having the public record corrected by me and asking for the apology to have the public record corrected by the Prime Minister, this message is relevant way beyond the confines of this churchyard. This message sends a signal to everyone in Barbados who is taking this meeting via the streaming route to understand that something must be going on in this campaign at this juncture with my contributions to the Democratic Labour Party and the three candidates in St. Philip for my participation to merit such a response from Ms. Motley on the occasion of the launch of their manifesto. I'm going to leave that there for now. And I'm going to give her a chance to set the public record straight from her end. I've done it from mine. Because if she doesn't set the public record straight from her end, within the next couple of days, I will have to say which offers of jobs came from Ms. Motley to me, based on no request from me, all of which I have had to turn down. So I would leave it there for now. We have a meeting in Rice's on Friday night, and if I don't get an apology from she, if she doesn't set the public record straight for the benefit of the Barbadian public, I would then have to tell the Barbadian public what job offers she made to me, some of which could not see the light of day, which I have turned down, all because I hold firm to my principle and my position that I will not take any job from a Prime Minister. I might take a consultancy, but in terms of a job like an ambassador or a minister, that is out of the window altogether. As a matter of fact, during the last election campaign, when Dr. Maskell and myself were campaigning so hard for the Barbados Labour Party, I had a discussion with Clyde in my room at the university. And Clyde and I agreed we need to continue our efforts to land the Barbados Labour Party. But one of the things that we will never do, if offered, is to go into any cabinet of Motley or anybody for that matter. And he is the only person that I have had a discussion on about a cabinet position in Mayor Motley's cabinet. And the position is that I will never do it. And Mr. Maskell, Dr. Maskell can confirm that. When there was great jubilation when Mr. Inouye won the seat, in his constituency office we were gathered, having a drink, and obviously everybody happy. And the majority of the persons there, in recognition of the type of performance I would have given to the Barbados Labour Party during the last election campaign, they all sounded out, man, Woody, man, you work hard, man. The Prime Minister will indeed put you in the cabinet. And I said to them, that is a position I do not want. I am not interested. I am comfortable at the university. I have served my time there. No interest in going into anybody's cabinet. and for she to have placed on the public record no ambassador's position, no ministerial position, and that is what drove me from the Barbados Labour Party. I read the letter. I read out the letter to you as the reasons I stated for leaving the Barbados Labour Party. But enough of that. That is enough. The press would capture the essence of what I've said. And those in their homes who are taking this meeting via the streaming room, they would have captured the essence of what I had to say in an attempt to set the public record straight. Ladies and gentlemen, this election campaign has reached a very interesting stage. It's reached a very interesting stage. And I am sensing that the momentum shift continues away from the Barbados Labour Party, and with good reason, because of what has transpired in this country in the last 3 years and 8 months, and the type of despotic leadership that this country has had to endure in the last 3 years and 8 months, and this idea that becoming a prime minister confers on you the right to speak to Barbadians how you feel like, when you feel like, and also not to speak to Barbadians when they ask for the spending of the taxpayers' money to be accounted for when it comes to certain activities. And when Barbadians with a legitimate right ask for the motivation of wanting to join with a company called Radical Investments Limited via a purchase agreement for them to bring in vaccines from AstraZeneca in circumstances when AstraZeneca had made it clear via policy that they do not do business with third parties, meaning private companies. And when we asked for an explanation for that, because when the ship hit the fan, and Mr. Maloney having to lodge his legal case to seek to recover $6.7 million US dollars, that is how we got to find out. My friends, if there wasn't a hitch somewhere along the line, that transaction would have gone through. And if AstraZeneca didn't stand firm to its policy resolve that it does not do business with private companies, then somebody, some company, some principal would have walked away with about $23.2 million in profit from importing those vaccines, carrying no downside risks. And in finance, downside risk with regard to importation and distribution mean that when you bring the things, you don't have any issue in getting them sold. Downside risk associates with when you have to hold on to the things for longer than you expect, and their shelf life pass. So you have to throw away some of them or give some of them away. But this company would not have carried any downside risk because every single vaccine that would have been brought into Barbados would have been pre-sold via those purchase agreements. And a whooping set of money would have been made by the principals of Radical Investments Limited. But God is good, and God is always righteous. And He will continue to look down on this society and economy. And He will help us to gain enough fortitude and enough courage that despite the nature of the leadership in this country, that some of us will be bold enough to stand up and speak on behalf of the voiceless firm in the knowledge, firm in the knowledge that whatever the response is, whether it is victimization or lie telling on the person, it is like water falling off a duck's back. And I continue to praise the Lord for the position that He has placed me in, not to have to settle for things that I know are wrong, unrighteous, indecent, and hypocritical, and having to remain with lips tight. It isn't by accident that the people of Barbados have gotten the opportunity to call into question the stewardship of the Barbados Labour Party. Yes, we may have a snap election, but you can see this snap election in a pandemic. I having to leave home every night and risk my life. You having to leave home every night and risk their lives. But thank God for the advancement of technology. Thousands of Barbadians not leaving home at all, but they are indeed consuming the message via streaming. But whatever the motivation was for calling this snap election in the middle of a pandemic, and it came as a surprise because we were led to believe that it wasn't going to happen. That's a few months ago. This gives Barbadians an opportunity whose backs were pushed to the wall for the last 3 years and a bit. This gives Barbadians the opportunity to demonstrate at this time and on the 19th of January that they are battered, they are bruised, mentally they are scared, psychologically they are wrecked with the type, as a result of the type of governance exhibited in this country under the leadership of Mayor Motley and the Barbados Labour Party. Yes, there will be difficult times, and the Barbados Labour Party inherited an economy that was in a perilous state. And I don't have to repeat it because I said it over and over on the occasion of the last election campaign. But I also said, given the strength of the talent that we had on that side at the time, that the Barbados Labour Party, that the Barbados economy would be pulled around through the careful application of appropriate financial and economic policies. And we understood that an economy at the time, very high debt, low growth, inflation levels that were a minor cause for concern, a very weak foreign exchange base, that those were the conditions that told you that there was time for corrective economic action. So it didn't come as a surprise that we had to go into the clutches of the IMF. Because if that is the quickest way to bring fiscal discipline to bear on the affairs of the country after the Barbados Labour Party took office, so be it. But what we didn't expect is that having done that, yes, the pandemic came, but we still did not expect that 3 years and 8 months, the economic conditions in Barbados today, apart from a deliberate, healthy foreign exchange stock made up predominantly by borrowing, contributed to in a very minimal way by the generation of foreign exchange, we never expected that in January of 2022, that this economy now is characterized by high debt again, debt to GDP ratio in the order of 150% having been brought down to 117%, heading in the right direction to meet the acceptable international target of 60% by 2033. We never expected, but that reduction was indeed contributed to largely or exclusively by the government repudiating, that is, refusing to pay just under $5 billion in domestic and foreign debt. So we find ourselves now with a debt profile and a debt situation which is dangerously close to what it was when the Barbados Labour Party took office in May of 2018. And what is even more of a concern is that the debt to GDP ratio has indeed climbed back up to over 150%, but it has happened in circumstances when about $2.5 billion was lost from our national output during the pandemic. And one of the things that we were taught by Professor Howard and the others in public finance was that your borrowing should indeed be related to your capacity to repay. But we had a situation where output declined considerably, about 20%, in just over 12 months. And the borrowing went in the other direction, and it's placed us back in a precarious debt management position today. But while the Barbados Labour Party came to office with a promise to do something about the rising cost of living, I remember it well. I remember it well. It was pronounced during the election campaign back in 2018. But we find ourselves in a position now where the rising cost of living continued virtually unabated. And it wiped out any meager increase in pay these public servants got, 5%, when 23% was deemed to be too low when the Democratic Labour Party was in power. But the cost of living continued to increase at a time when the unemployment rate, occasioned by many factors, exogenous and internal factors, has increased compared to May 2018. But also the level of underemployment continues to increase. And I can assure you that the percentage of families in Barbados living below the poverty line at a time when the cost of living is out of control is far, far greater than that percentage was in May of 2018. And the time for reckoning is around the corner. The current program with the IMF expires in September of this year. We have heard nothing about whether there will be a renewal of a program with the IMF going forward, but the Prime Minister has been bold enough and truthful enough. I can't say that to be the case all the time, based on what I said earlier, but she has been truthful enough to say that tough decisions will have to be made immediately after the election. But what she meant to tell you is tougher decisions will have to be made, because a whole lot of tough decisions were made since we entered this program with the IMF. And of course, the need to make tough decisions was used as a justification for calling a snap election in the middle of a pandemic. Well, the blame for having to make tough decisions can be as a result of the mismanagement on the part of me, or Jetta, or Dr. Eswick, or Michael Ashley, or Neil Marshall, or anybody in the Democratic Labour Party for that matter. The tough decisions having to be made immediately after the election must be as a result of the type of leadership, economic and financial leadership, displayed by the Barbados Labour Party in the last 3 years and 8 months. I saw some statistics on debt positions. And it is a shocking thing, you know. We had a series of bar charts. And it is so glaring that Barbados' debt position at this time is a cause for concern here, a warning winner here. If output was at its 2019 level before the pandemic came, when we had reached just over $10 billion in output, 10.5 billion, the level of debt in absolute terms and the debt to GDP ratio would indeed be very manageable, and we'd be going in the right direction. But as it is, with about $2.5 billion wiped off a national output, our debt position needs to be dealt with seriously. So these tough decisions will have to be made. And I understand, we know these things, we study these things. But we also know that all that money that was borrowed to property reform reserves, there's always a day of reckoning when you borrow money here. The obligations fall due at some time. And you better have the foreign exchange available to pay the people. And it is a very shameful thing that you have to run down your foreign reserve stock to pay your debt, as opposed to generating what we call in economics boosting your national capacity to import. All right? That is, generate some foreign exchange in order to help do the things that you need to do, including meeting the foreign obligations when they fall due. So we understand that money is tight in Barbados. We understand that the government could indeed applaud itself for the wastage of a lot of the taxpayers' money. I said wastage here. In spending on non-essential items, which if the Democratic Labour Party comes to power, they better try and do something about some of these things. This despotic leadership that has been practiced by necessity is associated with a propaganda unit. This Department of Public Affairs. To replicate the work and do a little more political work of GIS. And you have CBC there too, another propaganda arm of the government. But you go and set up this Department of Public Affairs. And I could understand that having its relevance if it was funded off the government books, but not treated as a civil service institution and money being taken from the consolidated fund to pay those folks. And we have seen projects that are in the nature of non-essential, but which allows certain persons' ego to get stoked and to become inflated. So they spend. Up to now, not a single person, probably besides one or two in the Ministry of Finance and the Prime Minister herself, knows how much of the taxpayers' money has been spent on the transition to a republic. And it is a very legitimate request, Madam, tell the Barbadians how much money was spent on the transition to a republic. Activities that cannot be an unreasonable question. No reply. Because I in charge, man. Despotic leaders don't respond to people when they ask such questions. They don't. They do as they like. But the day of reckoning coming. They do as they please. They don't see the need for 3 years to be coming up and we don't have a statement, financial statement and budgetary proposals. Whereas the trend was to have one every year or just over every year. While we are closing in on 3 years of not having one, all the other countries in the region and elsewhere, they've had about 2, in some cases 3 budget speeches in the time we haven't had one since March the 20th, 2019. So this is where we have reached. I have to leave now. I just got my call to come and address the meeting up in Bel Air, so I shall take my leave. So ladies and gentlemen, all that's left for me to do, because I really have to leave, is for those who are streaming and for those who are here, for those who are in earshot of my voice, give your support to Dr. David Eswick and ensure that this constituency gets working again, because it went to sleep before under the leadership of John King. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm obliged to you.
David Eswick, he was always my representative and he will be my representative until he says different.
Yeah, I know David Eswick to be a very good man. I met him personally and the conversations we had really showed me that he's a man that's willing to do for anybody that can help bring up the self the same way. You understand?
Yes, he's always for the constituents and he's always for all. He's very vibrant and again you can talk to him, you can get assistance from him. He's good for the constituency, for Barbados and for all.
He used to always look out for the people. Like anytime you get to read, he would never say no. That's one thing for sure I know as growing up. His energy is just a vibe. And I will always vote for you though. And it's always for you, David, always.
I know David for a long time, man. David always around every shop corner, Breton, Sunbury, even Six Rose, Ebenezer. I never left you out. Give you anything at all. You can't be hungry when Mr. Eswick.
David is a proper man. He's good and he's always around the fellows. And he was ever a proper man to the fellows in the constituency.
Every time he lets you come, David are retired. David are retired. David are retired. David are retired.
I know David from the time he was born. He has always been very progressive, knowledgeable, and caring. I, Keith Allen, is always for you, David.
Always for you.
Always for you.
Always for you.
Always for you.
Mm-hmm.
Always for you. Always for you. Always for you. Always for you. David Eswick. Always for you, David Eswick. Jesus.
people's champ. The only ones in Philip West want. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. St. Philip people know this is true. Eswick always for you. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. In transport and water, agriculture, economic affairs. He helped build this nation for years. He sweat yellow and blue. Eswick always for you. So F-U-C-K, tell she I say the best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Who say Philip Westwick? David Eswick.
Ladies and gentlemen, on this God-filled, because there are those who want us to stop call the name God, on this God-filled, God-blessed 11th day of January 2022, let me say a good night to the comrades and friends of the Democratic Labour Party. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. I have spoken in this area on many occasions, almost every election that was called in Barbados, going back from what I would say when I was a youngster at Princess Margaret Secondary School. And that is many years ago. And then after that, I spoke here on the behalf and supported David Eswick. I am here tonight to endorse Dr. David Eswick as the re-elected member for Parliament for St. Philip West. Those of you who are following this meeting and others on the World Wide Web, good night to you. Good night to those who are following us on Instagram and YouTube or any other electronic media. And also a good night to the persons of the print media. So I'm here tonight to not only endorse Dr. David Eswick, but to have a conversation, as I have been doing since elections were announced, with the people in the areas where meetings were held. So I spoke to the persons, had the conversation with persons at Harlington. I had conversations with persons at Lowlands. I went into St. John, at Collington, Messiah Street, Foster Hall, to talk to the people of Barbados, to have this conversation. A conversation that is important, a conversation that I want you to sit back, relax, and ponder, and ask yourself the question, on January the 19th, I am going to exercise my right. Because we have challenges in Barbados. This country is at a crossroads. And it is important to note, that is why he says I'm having a conversation. I am going to talk to you, and although you are not speaking back to me, I understand your answers. I understand your feelings. Because Barbadians tonight are asking themselves, how did we get here? Many of them are being challenged. They are asking themselves, tomorrow, what bill I am going to pay, whether I'm going to pay the light bill this month and leave the water bill, whether I am going to pay the mortgage on the house and leave out the insurance on the car, or whether or not I'm going to cut the food bill and then pay a little on the car, a little on the mortgage, hoping that the mortgage will go into arrears and then I can't pay it at all and the bank repossess my property. Those are the questions that many Barbadians are asking tonight. as a result of a leadership of a country that came to us with a covenant of hope that has now become a covenant of despair, a covenant of darkness, that we have now reached a stage in this country where we have been led into a valley of dry bones. And the Ezekiels and the Joshuas that were supposed to deliver us from this valley of dry bones, that was presented by a leader in the name of Mayor Amar Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, who led us to believe that the Democratic Labour Party, under the guidance of Faradell Jerome Stewart and his cabinet, was the worst thing that had ever happened to Barbados. So through deception, we were led to a valley of dry bones. So come January the 19th, the Ezekiels and the Joshuas are going to rise. The Prime Minister of Barbados has created a monster. And what we will do, along with the Ezekiels that would now raise the valley of dry bones, along with the Joshuas that would lead the army, we are going to behead that monster. That is what we are going to do. Because in the past 3 years, this country was led on 5 principles, and that is why they said that we are having this conversation. And night after night, I would show you different ways in which this country was led using the same principles. And the first principle, that we were led with lies. The second principle, that we were led by deceit. The third principle, we were led by deception. The fourth principle, we were led by communication, propaganda. And the fourth principle, we were led on borrowed money. Come on, people. Conversation. We're going to talk. So, at the end of the day, we got to ask ourselves the question, why it is, what happened that all of us believe that the current Prime Minister was this brilliant. We were led to believe that she had the pedigree, she and her cabinet, that we were led to believe. That she was born to be a Prime Minister, born to be a leader. Come on, people. And what happened on May 24th, 2018, against a platform of deception, against a platform of being accused of corruption and bribery, the Democratic Labour Party, against all of that, against communications propaganda that we are seeing now, we gave the current Prime Minister the permission through our votes to lead this country. We gave her a 30-0 directorship, and she took over the office of CEO. She took over the chairman as chairman of the board, along with her 29 directors, and decided that they were going to manage the affairs of Barbados. And it so happened that within that chairmanship, as time went on, and the Democratic Labour Party remained silent. We remained silent for a reason. Because remaining silent doesn't mean you are a fool. But you allow persons to function And when we removed Mayor Mortley from the general congregation and placed her we robed her with 30 pieces of gold and silver. And placed her behind the pulpit. And as she stood behind the pulpit, and time went on, we realized what we had before us, what we were given, were nothing more than a wolf in sheep clothing. That we were given nothing more than an individual who talks a lot and does nothing. We voted on a premise that the former Prime Minister Faradell Jerome Stewart did not talk to the people of Barbados. We said he was weak. So we went for a person who, at the drop of a hat, can put together four phrases, can speak eloquently for an hour without looking at a paper. That is what we wanted. Only to realize that empty vessels keep the most noise. And we have an empty vessel. That is why we are. That is what is happening in Barbados tonight. We have the perception of an empty vessel. So they came to Barbadians. And as I said, we are having this conversation. And they made us believe that the solutions lie within them. But the solutions, as we understand it, the solutions were clouded in deception. And let me explain to you, that's why I said we're having a conversation. I'm not doing a political speech. I am taking this conversation down to the wire. We are taking this conversation down to January the 19th. Because when you walk into that polling booth, it must be clear to you that we have to send the Barbados Labour Party a message. That we have been patient for too long. That we have waited. We have waited that the government was given a full mandate to manage the affairs of this country. And within 3 years, and I put it less than 3 years, a general election is called in the midst of COVID. When I tell you about lies and deception and deceit and communication propaganda. And in the midst of COVID, this is the same Prime Minister who said that she would never call another election in the midst of COVID after the St. George by-election and the results. This is the same Prime Minister who said that to us. That she would never call another election in the midst of COVID. And lo and behold, in the midst of COVID, with increasing cases, a country in turmoil, a Prime Minister decides that she is going to call an election overnight at the snap of a finger. But the reasons why she is calling this election is I am going to outline to you some of the facts as to why. Why? Because they spent the first 3 years in office singing a national anthem called The Lost Decade. Where they should have spent time, when the Barbados Labour Party should have spent time dealing with the social issues in this country, restructuring the economy, and doing what is supposed to be done to enhance the lives of all Barbadians, they spent 3 years with a national choir of 30 members singing the last decade. Well, tonight there's no more last decade to be sung. Because the national anthem is no more and the choir is split down the middle. That is why I'm saying we're having a conversation. Because I want you to think. So if the choir now split down the middle, with George Payne on one side having 17 members and singing the alto, and you have Mayor Mortley on the other side with 13 members singing the bass. So the choir now split. You have 2 choir masters. So as a result of choir number 1 head by George Payne and choir number 2 head by Mayor Amar Mortley, the Prime Minister, and a Prime Minister saying to you that the reason why she called an election is that as the reason the country is divided. Now come on people, that's why I say conversation is important. You want to tell me that the people of Barbados gave you 30 seats, and as a result of 30 seats, a country is divided, so you call in an election? You don't want to lead a divided country? Lies and deceit? You know the good thing, and I realize there's a trend when leaders like to come with lies and deceit and hypocrisy. You have these flashy words. So when they present to us that we are in this together, give me the vote and watch me. I have your back. We is we. We are Barbadians. We understand each other. All of these catchphrases, fancy terms that has come to nothing. So as a result of that, Barbadians are now asking, what happened? Nothing has happened. It is that we have been carried down a road of lies, deceit, deception, communication, propaganda, and borrowed money. I want you to think, you can imagine that in 2022, a Prime Minister is going to go on national television and say to the people of Barbados that if you re-elect her, they are going to bring down the food prices. Why it is that it couldn't be done in 2018? That they now have a plethora, that they are going to roll out a number of policies that you are going to see food prices coming down. Kerry Simmons is saying to the public, if you re-elect me and the Barbados Labour Party, we are going to remove the charges that we have on freighting. We are going to reduce VAT on energy products. Let me say something to you. That is the biggest lie and deceit and deception you can want from leaders in a country. That is why I say, let us ponder. Let us think for 30 seconds. Just remain silent. For 30 seconds. The reason why I say that is when the Democratic Labour Party was in office, and I am going to repeat it until it bursts your eardrums, because we are having a conversation and you must listen. A lot of people hear but don't listen. When the Democratic Labour Party was in office, the price of a barrel of oil, and I want you to remember, I want you to think, the price of a barrel of oil moved from $45 a barrel to $200 a barrel. And we decided as a government that we were not going to pass the energy prices on to the people of Barbados. We said we were going to walk. Bajans would say we were going to swallow. And we swallowed the increase in cost in kerosene, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel to the amount of $90 million. That is what we did for the people of Barbados. Miss Mortley, Clyde Maskell, and all of them ran around the country and said that we were going to bankrupt the NOC. I want you to remember that. That we were going to bankrupt the country. They took over. BNOC is alive and well today and functioning. And we protected Barbadians from the cost. Tell me what is happening now. Before we demit office, that $90 million we had already repaid to BNOC. That $90 million. But not only that, we decided that we were going to absorb the cost of food prices. We were going to absorb that cost. My friends, the people of St. Patrick's, the people of Louders, Sweet Street, Foursquare, Hope Road, Hopefield Road, Charnock, Yorkshire, Dolphin Park, I want you to remember that Packers, Woodbourne, all of the Highland, I want you to start thinking that between 2008 and 2018, my friends, a tin of corned beef in Barbados before the DLP demit office was $1.89. In the face of the rising oil prices and the rising cost, a tin of corned beef was $1.89. I can challenge anybody on that. Between 2008 and 2018, the Democratic Labour Party, we demitted office on May 24th, 2018. And before the first case of COVID was recorded in this country, because the first case of COVID was recorded on May 20th, 2020. Come on, people. And before COVID, the same tin of corned beef went to $3.25. And depends on where you shop, you could have gotten it cheaper. That is why I want you to listen. COVID struck. COVID struck. And after COVID, within that short period of time, a tin of corned beef in Barbados today is now $7.59. A tin of corned beef in the supermarket today is $7.59. So a mother who is struggling and who would like to do what we call a 1, 2, 3, corned beef, macaroni, and English potatoes, that mother now could be able to buy the English potatoes and the macaroni, but not the corned beef. So you can't call it a 1, 2, 3 anymore. You got to call it a 2, 3. That is what is happening in Barbados. A package of what we call simple pasta. A simple package that was 68 cents, 98 cents. Or what we call chow mein is now $2.75, and they are blaming COVID for everything. Everything is COVID. So I want you to understand what is happening. I want you to understand, my friends, what is happening in this country and what Barbadians are enjoying. That is what they are enjoying. So we have to make it right. We have to make it right come January the 19th. We must make it right. We must say to the Barbados Labour Party, enough is enough. You are saying to me that the government could not find $250 to pay the nurses, the frontline workers, as hazard pay or overtime. These were the people who went to the front line from the first case of COVID. The police officers who risked the families, the nurses who work in the QEH and the geriatric hospital, as well as the old people homes, and risked their lives. And the Prime Minister held a press conference that she would pay hazard pay as well as overtime. We are now at January the 11th, 2022, not a penny to these workers. But yet, you can find money to pay David Ellis. You can find money to pay Justin Ram. You can find money to put Pat Paris in the Prime Minister's office. You can find money to pay Avinash Prasad. You can find money, my friends, to pay Clyde Maskell. But persons who are on the front line for COVID, just $250 you can't find. Come on, people.
Wicked.
That is why I said the conversation. The conversation. And this conversation is going to continue. The conversation is going to continue. And this is the government. This is the government that have us in the clutches of the IMF. And when persons are going to tell you that the reason why they went to the IMF, I have something to say to you tonight. And listen to me carefully. You can check the list of countries. There is no country in the world, and I can challenge anybody on it. There is no country in the world that defaulted on its international loans, went to the IMF for a full program, and did not have a devaluation. It either came early or it came late. That is gospel. Go and check the list of countries, every one of them that went through a default, that defaulted on the international loans, what we call the international side of your debt portfolio, every one of them. And I will say something to you tonight. And I don't, those of you who are hearing in my voice, I don't want you to if you're drinking your tea, your late tea, please hold it for a minute. Hold your tea for a minute. If you're by the shop drinking a white rum and a soda water, hold it for a minute. I'm going to give you a little quick snapshot of the balance sheet of Barbados. As far as the IMF is concerned, November 30th, 2021. Let me say something to you tonight. That as it is now, as of November 30th, 2021, the government of Barbados had paid the IMF $15,430,536 in interest in a matter of 3 years. That is the type of interest, nothing to do with the principal. And as it stands now, we are in arrears to the IMF. Why people are reading about consultation of the IMF and consultation for, I went after the balance sheet. That is how I was trained. Was trained by some of these best people that work in the IMF as well as the Federal Reserve Bank. And they said, Jector, don't watch the consultation, go for the balance sheet of the country. And that is where we are. So by 2025, my friends, we would have paid the IMF, we have to pay the IMF $55,790,536 in interest by 2025. Come on. And as it stands now, we have borrowed 864 million Barbados dollars from the IMF. Barbados dollars. 64 and 36 is 100. We are short by $136 million before we reach $1 billion to the IMF. Come on, people. Come on. And I said the conversation. This is the type of nonsense that is in this country. So I want you, on January the 19th, If you have your mule, tie your mule. If you have a donkey, tie your donkey. Secure your pigs. If your cat giving you trouble, put the cat in a bag and walk with it to the polling station. They can't stop you from voting. Cook for your husband. Cook for your boyfriend. Cook for your girlfriends. Secure your children. Go to the polls and vote for Dr. David Eswick, a man that is focused and committed. A vote for Dr. David Eswick is a vote for the Democratic Labour Party, and a vote for the Democratic Labour Party is a vote for stability, a vote for decency, a vote for transparency, because we recognize that Barbados is not just an economy, it is also a society. Thank you very much, my friends. Good night.
I know Dr. Eswick from time a little boy. His family, everything, he was a good family. He come along poor, but he had pride, And from small, he always liked people.
The doc is my man for years. Always was, always will be. You can go to the doc for anything. He'll be there for you.
Yes, I want Dr. Eswick to get back in, because he was always nice to us when he was in, not we alone, the whole neighborhood. So he deserved back his seat that he was being robbed off.
You know that. But otherwise, he's good. I know he become a man and doctor. He help people. Also know he's a politician. He help people more.
Because the last gentleman that was running, he never went to nobody's house. No, he never walked around to let you know that he's running. No, nothing like that. So Dr. Eswick deserved back his seat.
And vote X for David Eswick. I telling everybody, it is Eswick, more Eswick, forward Eswick, and back Eswick.
Vote for the doc. He is the man for you.
Always for you and always for us. That is enough.
Biggity. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Make way for the people's champ, the only ones in Philip West want. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Sin Philip people know this is true. Eswick always for you. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. In transport and water, agriculture, economic affairs, he helped build this nation for years. He sweat yellow and blue. Eswick always for you. So F-U-C-K, tell she I say, the best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Who say Philip Westwick? David Eswick. Biggity. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Make way for the people's champ, the only ones in Philip West want. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Sin Philip people know this is true. Eswick always for you. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. In transport and water, agriculture, economic affairs, he helped build this nation for years. He sweat yellow and blue. Eswick always for you. So F-U-C-K, tell she I say, the best pick is Eswick. The best pick is Eswick. The best pick. Make way for the people's champ, the only ones in Philip West want. Tell me who's the best pick? David Eswick. Oh Lord.
Let me say a pleasant good evening
to the residents of St. Patrick's, the residents of Packers, the residents of Pritchard Hill, and also those residents who can hear me as far as Bright Hill and going up on the left side there of Country View Park and Dolphin Park. Let me say something to you this evening in that I took a long time to decide that I was going to re-enter this political race. And I decided to do that for a number of reasons. 3 of them I will speak to you about tonight, given that we have certain COVID restrictions. I, however, will have a website up by weekend to which I will speak to all of the national issues that are affecting people, and I will tell you what they are and how I propose and the party proposes to solve those problems one by one by one, and you will then decide for yourself whether you are going to vote for me or the Democratic Labour Party or stay with people who did nothing in this area for 3.5 to 4 years. I know that I represented your interests before. I know that during that representation, we face a crisis now known as the Great Recession. I did not call it the Great Recession. It is called that because it was the worst since 1929. And while that I had to battle with that, I did not shirk my responsibility. I could have been seen around all of the constituency every weekend supporting all the small businesses in this constituency. And what is also true, I didn't run and hide when I lost. I stood up as a man, because there's no boxer who don't get licked down and get back up. There's no politician that doesn't lose and get back up. I did not hide. I decided that this is what I can do with my life. I am a medical doctor trained 16 years. I could go back to medical practice, but my daughter is dealing with that. Let me date as a politician and go along to heaven. I am devoting the next few years that I have to do the best I can on behalf of this country. I am not talking to you tonight about BLP, DLP. I don't care about them peas. Barbados must come first in any political system. And the day you begin to tamper with putting Barbados first, we got a problem. Let me explain. During the crisis, in difficult times, I was able to fix Packers Road, Sweet Street, Louders Hill. I was able to fix Brayton number 2, Kian Edgecombe Hill, Hamlin Road. I was able to fix Charnas A, Charnas B, Hopefield. I was able to fix, in addition to that, from 6 Roads down to Low Graves. And on top of that, I was able to do Oldbury Road. You tell me what was done in the last 4 years by the last administration. I am prepared to put my record during the crisis against what they did. Nothing. So therefore, for me, this is not a matter of whether you support A or B. It is a matter of what the record says. I am not in politics to have nobody to love me or like me. Like what I can do on behalf of the people. That's what it is for me personally. And I remember one feeling that I had, and I am not a man who can be a liar to myself or a hypocrite to myself. I failed to do something that should have been done. I wrote the MTW with a petition to get a walk path from the roundabout up to Garden Water School to stop the literature for walking the road on mornings and evenings from school. I left it there to be done. The election came and I couldn't do it. It's still undone. I will ask you, give me the opportunity to put that right, because I have children too. And that is a reasonable risk for those children walking there without a sidewalk. All you need to do is compulsory acquire the land, because I had a little projection from when they did the roundabout. That still needs to be acquired. We can acquire the strip and fix it. I didn't get it done the last time. I will endeavor to do it because it's the right thing to do. In addition to that, I know you had issues with the Yorkshire Road for years. And they were supposed to have finished Yorkshire Road. I didn't get it done. I will do my efforts best to get it done, because in the crisis, I did a lot of roads, but I could not complete that. In fact, I also did Evelyn Road. And so I'm trying to be honest with you, because you will say, Eswick, you didn't do ABC, and I told you, oh, true. But you had an administration for 4 years that did nothing. So how you can criticize me? And I tell you all the things I would have done, and they were here for 4 years and did nothing. All right? And on top of that, John King is my friend. And John King's mother, who lives in Kingsland, gave me every pot and pan for all of my luncheons since I got in. You understand what I'm telling you? And I don't have nothing negative to say about John King, because as my friend, we all come from his own thing, and we were musicians together. But I don't like the way they treat the man. He was the representative, even though he beat me. That's all right, you get your tail licking sometimes, so what? Take your licks. And what ended up happening was this. As soon as John won, the decision was taken to undermine the man. So the first thing the Prime Minister did, and we shuffled in the cabinet, was remove him as a minister responsible for culture and sports, and brought him under her ministry, so he had no power. The only thing he could do is to get anything done is to go through her. Remember what she said in the by-election, nothing can be done unless you do what? Come through me. So what she did with John King was to tie a string around two things that dangle between the legs. And as a result, John was neutered or spaded, which one of these. The fact of the matter is this. I was a representative of people and a minister, so I know when you want to do things and you can't do it, and your Prime Minister got you shackled, they're afraid of man. And then, for 4 years, and that's what hurt me about it, because nobody can treat me so. You know, I can become a half unusual at times. You could not tell me that for 4 years you couldn't do nothing for me, and I was a duly elected representative for you, and when he was pushed out of politics, within the next 2 weeks, they went and took equipment to fix roads down in St. Clair Alley and down in Connesville. A travesty of justice. You could not do it for him when he was the duly elected representative. But as long as you got him out and bring McConney, Miss Honey, then you can bring equipment to go down there and fix roads. That is an embarrassment and a travesty to that young man. And I don't play around with it. He on the other side, I don't care. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And I at the age of my life now, where my daughter is now a medical doctor. I practiced medicine for 16 years. I was in politics now for 20. That's about how much? 36. That's more than half of my years because I get 62 now. And I out there. So I want nothing to fight for. I'm fighting now to do what is right. Use my skills, my knowledge, and experience to help. And I have a significant, and I will speak to you about 3 of those issues this evening. I served as the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors in this country. My deputy was Sir David Seal. I served as chairman of the Economic Committee of the Cabinet. I served as the chairman responsible for investment in this country. I then ended up serving as Minister of Economic Planning and Development, Trade, Industry and Commerce. So I now speak to you not as a nitwit or a novice. I speak to you from someone who have proven knowledge and experience as to what we can do to get ourselves out of this hole. I will therefore speak to 3 things. The first one is this. Ladies and gentlemen, something is fundamentally wrong when Barbadians can keep their mouth shut. And when Barbadians who can go and vote on the 19th do not see that something is wrong when your fellow Barbadians who are in isolation, who can walk, who can talk, who can drive, who can speak, and who can write, a government to tell you, you can't come on the board. That is voter, not only interference, it is what is called voter suppression. You must understand it could have been you. Only reason why you are not and have the right to vote is because you ain't got COVID. Why it is that the Prime Minister of Bahamas issued a letter last week and said everybody who is in isolation that is capable of voting must be given the right to vote. Why should they stop Barbadians, 3 or 4 thousand Barbadians from voting in this country? We are a modern country, man. It ain't rocket science. Put the technology for them to vote digitally, man. Put the technology. It's a simple matter. It's a box in a dang envelope, man. Put the appropriate personnel to go in the places. Let the people vote and put it in an envelope. Sanitize it and put it in the damn box and sanitize that too. And bring it to the polling station and open it and count the vote. What are we doing, man? It could be any one of you here tonight. It is voter suppression and it is wrong. And I deprecate on the Prime Minister and her advisors. Now, I don't blame her, she's not a physician or medical personnel. But it is wrong when other countries less technical than Barbados can allow their citizens to vote. It is wrong to stop and remove the right of the citizens to vote. That is enshrined in the Constitution of this country and within what is known as the Representation of the People's Act. Established in the Constitution. You can't disenfranchise Barbadians like this. You know what's also important is you got to watch what's going to happen on election day. Because the logic is, if you're going to social distance, how are you going to social distance with 5 people in the motor car? How are you going to social distance? So it means that if you had voting from 6 o'clock to 8, and you would normally take 5 or 6 people in the car, now you can only take 1 or 2. So You need to extend the hours of the voting, people. You also need to increase the number of voting stations and booths within the polling station. It's common sense. Not to show they're done. Because they know what they're about. I don't care who will win one way or the other. If you people can vote for you, so be it. But you must not denigrate and destroy the traditions of this country with respect to proper electioneering in Barbados because you want to win again. You think I'm confident with you doing the press conference and say you want 36 again? That you can do what you want and Bajans gotta accept it. That's why I just off my boots and said to hell with that. I live in this country, man. I am going to stand up and say wrong is wrong. And I can talk fearlessly. I ain't in politics to make nobody like me. Don't like me. Like what I do. Don't like me. I will stand on my records. And you know, this is a serious matter. And I'm very concerned about it. Because today for me, tomorrow for you. And the sad thing about this is that I see Barbadians, whether it's BLP or it's DLP, sometimes seem oblivious to what we are trying to tell them. You can't do it like that, B. You're destroying the structural integrity of our processes. You can't do it that way, man. You know, governments come to office and governments go to office. That is democracy, man. That's democracy, man. But to deny people who can speak, see, hear, walk, talk, smell, and taste the right to come out and vote and say, you're going to stand in there, 4,500, and the Omicron cases increasing by 457 on average every single day. By that time the election come in the next week, how many Barbados is disenfranchised when are going to stop this rubbish? Understand what he's saying here. I ain't talking to DLP supporters alone. I'm talking to BLP supporters. Understand what is happening. Today for me, tomorrow for you. If a government change and Democratic body do the same and add on and make it worse, this is how you go into a problem and a crisis. We got to stop this nonsense and nip it in the bud. This is a serious matter. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know that got all the memes out there by me. I swear, backs, all the bullshit. I don't care. I gonna talk straight. And I know when I talk straight, we don't understand what I say, but I don't use the fancy language. But I know fancy language. I was trained in phonetics. I was trained in what is called the iambic pentameter. I was trained, gosh damn, how to utilize similes, metaphors, and so on. But I prefer to talk to you in raw Bajan. I ain't a poet. I ain't the queen grandson. Because they don't know nothing but me. I can talk in Bajan. Who like it? That's a business. And who don't like it? That's a business. That's a decision that I have taken. I talking to you straight up. No fancy language, no pretty talk. But when I get in England now, bring the tea for me, please. Oh, what a wonderful sight. I can be a chameleon, pretty man. In Megansburg. Look, the other issue that bothers me immensely is cost of living. When I went through, and I'm hoping to canvass St. Patrick's and surrounding districts, hopefully on Thursday. So we got a canvassing schedule. And during that period of time, I will come to house to house and get into further details. But I said there will be a website up where I would direct all of you to go to the website to see what I'm saying in more detail and how we can manage the affairs I speak to you about. Let me explain to you about this thing called rising prices in this country and why it is indeed a travesty that this government is telling you that there's nothing that they can really do. When a people is suffering and a people can't fend for themselves, the only support you have is the government. The government can't renege on that responsibility. That is what you voted them in for. And what I want you to understand, that I was out in Marchfield, I think it was yesterday in the morning, in the afternoon. And I went to the house of an old girl, and her sons were raising dogs and so on for resale. And she told me about one bag of rice, 20-pound bag of rice, that they went and bought the week before that was $21. And within the next week, it was $37. Add that the increase in electricity bills that going up. It's them us that put on the 40% diesel. It's them. It's not us that put on the 40% gasoline. It's them. It's not us that increased bus rate by $1.50. It's them. It's not us that added $45 to the average man water bill. It's them. And these are the same people that when we in office said you can't tax your way out of recession. And as soon as they get in, raise land tax. Put on a storage tax for people who ain't got the storage. Put on tax on water. And then they said all the other bills are increased. So the average man struggling through that since 2018. And what he's struggling through that every single day, inflation going up, and he's struggling more and more. Let me tell you tonight how this matter can be resolved sensibly. It will be on the website in more detail. You all are intelligent. All you need to have is a basket of goods that the average Barbadian uses on a day-to-day basis. Let's assume that that basket has in 50 goods. All you need to know is what is the landed price of that particular good from that basket when it comes in at the port or the airport or the seaport. When that item come in, the government puts on taxes, duties, they put on VAT, and in cases they put on something called excise tax if it is related to petroleum products. What they need to do is that if this item come in at $10 today, and this is in the basket that you need to protect poor people because poor people use it, and it goes up to $20 next week, all you need to do is that the increase of $10 from the 10 to 20, that's the increase of $10, decrease your VAT, decrease your duties, and decrease your excise tax by the same equivalent $10, and the item comes through without any impulse. Any loss to the government in terms of revenue, the government borrows it from the central bank. That's the government bank. And the government can pay back the central bank in 500 years. Central bank can keep it on the asset side of the balance sheet for 1,000 years. Because the central bank is not like Scotia Bank or Royal Bank. Central bank belongs to us. Royal Bank got to get money, interest on the loan to pay all of their investors. The investors in central bank is you and me. We own it. Understand what he's saying, huh? Understand what he's saying. So when I sit there and tell what my experiences are, I wonder what them 5 or 6 so-called advisors telling the Prime Minister. I don't blame the Prime Minister because she is not an expert in these areas. I blame the piss poor advice that she's getting for some puppets, some numbskulls. Why at the same time you are suffering day to day and they're twiddling their hands, going home with $35,000 or $40,000 a month? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a serious matter. And I'm going to say to you, the position I just advised to you that can be done, I know some clown going to say, wait, but you're borrowing money from the central bank. You remember last month, the government tried to float a bond for $125 million, and the private sector didn't take it up. They borrowed the money from the central bank. So when you can't borrow the money from the central bank in a long-term time and save the people of the pressure of inflation, nonsense. Are you ready for I'm going to rip them up. I tell them, they know me, they know as a man don't talk. I got my research well and prepared. With about 500 cases waiting for them. Let them come. They ain't come yet. I know they're coming to 6 rows to say, Thursday, let them come. Because I waited for them. Because none of them can outthink me. None of them. Let me go now to something that will affect all government workers in this country. And this is frightening for me. So I'm going to go very slowly. Because tomorrow I know they're going to come up, ruff, backs, and a whole bunch of bullshit. Let me then be calm and circumspect. We have a pension crisis in Barbados. This is not David Estwick talking. This is the Article 4 consultation from the IMF done in between August and December 2021. The last actuarial report, you can Google these things for yourself, and check for yourself. The report said that the IMF said to the government, you have to take harsh decisions going forward. The actuarial report said the harsh decisions that the government must take for the NIS are as follows. There's them talking here, not me. You have to now work longer to get a pension. But you're working 67, you're going to work 100 years now. You have to now get a smaller pension. You got to increase contributions. And on top of all of that, that happened before the last report was 2018. But COVID destroyed the NIS in 2020 when we had 40,000 people unemployed. So 40,000 people were not paying their contributions, so the matter get worse. And as a result of the NIS in that position, they had to borrow $261 million to bail out the Self-Employment Fund and the Unemployment Fund. Let me tell you why that happened. Because during the debt restructuring, them went and they went and decided, they did it. None of you didn't do it. They did it. Wrote off government liability to the NIS to the tune of $1.6 billion. In other words, the money that the NIS lent to them, they decided they paid it back. $1.6 billion in cash that the NIS should have to make sure they can secure your pensions they can't get back. And that's why they had to go and borrow the $261 million of property severance fund and the unemployment fund. We don't understand what whole serious thing. And out of losing the $1.6 billion in cash, this is what the actuarial report said, and the IMF Article 4 constitution said. This is what the part is frightening. You know what it said? It said that the NIS will have a negative operational balance by 2028. That is 6 years from now. Which means that the contributions from the NIS is less than what the NIS is going to pay out. We in trouble, man, because of that decision they took. And you need to understand, for me, this is not a BLP, DLP matter. This is a matter of bad understanding and governance and putting the future of our pensions at risk. Many of you they're working now who expect to have a pension, I can't guarantee you can get it. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because anything I tell you, go Google the Article 4 consultation. Go Google the last actuarial report between 2015 and 2018. And you'll see what I'm telling you is not political. It is just what it is. And all of it stems from the government refusing to pay the NIS $1.6 billion that owed them and cut the debt. Serious matter. But, you know, what this unearthed is a bigger problem. And I know that you all guys going to work every day, trying to make ends meet, sometimes may not understand. Let me explain for you. There's a department in economics known as demographic economics. What demographic economics mean is that they look at the population and the population growth and determine how that population help the economy to grow. Barbados had extremely bad demographics. And that is why taking that decision to write off the $1.6 billion that the government owed the NAS was a bad decision. Let me explain. The population in Barbados between age 20 and 40 declining. We are aging population. So the population between age 65 and above increasing. So the productive sector that is driven by the young people that are out there trying to live every day, who got to buy car, buy house, pay for the children, take care of them, that number is decreasing. The older people that no go dependent pension, that number is increasing. So what that tells you is happening is that we got a crisis down the line. So if you know that and the data is there, how can you remove $1.6 billion from the cash flow of the NAS? Explain that one to me. And what is so much of a travesty is this: that to replace a population, the Barbados population is declining. But we went to school. It's take a man and a woman to put your child. So you got a man and a woman, 1 and 1 is 2. So it takes 2 to produce 1. So the only way you can replace 2 to produce 2 is if they got 2 children. So therefore, in order for the population to grow, you got more than 2 children for man and woman. You know what the population growth rate is in Barbados? 0.68. Understand what I'm trying to say to you, ladies and gentlemen? How can they not understand the demographics of this country and its implicated to economics, and you're going to take $1.6 million for the NAS cash flow? How are you going to get it back? How are you going to get it back when the population that is producing the contribution to NAS declining and the old people who draw pensions increasing? Ladies and gentlemen, look. All I can say to you is that I am here to talk to you about the normal political bullshit. I am here being honest and straight with you based on the information and the data. You will now make your own decisions regarding what I'm saying to you. And I advise, don't take my word. Read the Article 4 consultation when the IMF said that the harsh measures have to be taken. But if you know that is said to you when you make the IMF, tell the Barbadians what are the harsh decisions you got to take. Tell them that. And if I am wrong, go look at the actual report that I just spoke to you about. When it said the harsh decisions are working longer, increasing contributions, getting a lower pension. But they are the people who cut your pension already. How much more are you going to cut it? There are Barbadians right now who had pension, can barely survive on the day. You want to cut it some more now based on what I tell you? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't like to talk and criticize without telling you how to fix the problem. And the way to fix the problem is very simple. That's why I thank the Lord for the opportunities I had to learn a lot in finance and economics. And I learned a lot from Owen Arthur. We used to be on the phone calling, and I was a boss man. Owen, how would you handle this? And he was saying me to this and that and that. And I learned and pick up when I was sports person of finance in 2005 to 2008, and then Minister of Economic Planning and Development. And I say that to say to you is that I, as a medical doctor, I know how to learn and seek knowledge. The solution to the problem is this. If any of you they want a loan tomorrow, you can't get the loan from the central bank. You gotta go to the private sector, Scotia, Royal Bank, First Caribbean, First Citizens, they get a loan. Or the credit union. And when you get that loan, you got to pay them back the principal, which is how much you borrow, plus the interest. What I'm saying to you now is that the central bank is not a commercial bank. The central bank is a bank of the government. So the government can determine how much they want to borrow, rate to pay it back, and what is the rate. If you go and borrow from the commercial bank as the government, the rate can be higher than borrow from the central bank that belongs to you and me. There's only one shareholder of the central bank, the people of Barbados. And we can therefore use that in a developmental way that these guys don't seem to understand. And anything I'm telling you, I can tell you, go and Google it. The principles were developed in 1974 by an economist known as Professor Mitchell and a man from the Federal Reserve known as Warren Mosler. And the great leaders of the Federal Reserve in the United States spoke to it. Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, and the list goes on. So I tell you what I know happens. And everybody were wrong when the government floated that $125 million and the private sector taken up. Who took it up? The same central bank took it up as what was known as a medium-term note, as a 10-year note. It could be taken up by a debenture of 20, 30 years. So let me tell you the solution. The preamble was important. You understand what I'm telling you is what happens. And the government just used it. But when the Democratic Party over, they said we were printing money. Well, they were printing money too. Try to hide. Anytime we do the print, central bank take up debt from the government, it is printing money. Because it's new money. It's not old money. Old money comes from at the bar from the money in the commercial bank. Because that's your money that's circulating. But we tell the central bank, put in new money, it is printing money on top of the old money. Bunch of novices. No, can't challenge me. I raise them for them. I can eat them up. I spit them out. Look, this is the way to handle the problem. Firstly, I would not have done what they did to the NIS based on the demographics I just explained. Because if you take $1.6 billion in assets and cash that the NSS would have, how can you replace the $1.6 billion to make sure that it's functional and it can provide pensions when your old people increasing and young people decreasing? You got a bar. You got a bar. How are you going to get the money when the economy is flat because of Delta and Omicron and you don't know how long it is going to be? A bad decision. Bad policies. No. It happened already. I can't do nothing about it. But that's how I would recapitalize the NIS. I would use the central bank. I would say to the NIS, look, in order for you to be solvent and you can pay the pensions that you have to pay to Barbadians over the next 20, 30 years, you need the $1.6 billion. This is what we can handle the NIS. Go out there and float a bond. Float a bond like how the government can float a bond, because NIS is owned by the government. That bond would now be bought by the central bank. And I would want it to be a long-term bond, a debenture, so that the NIS would now get the $1.6 billion in their coffers, and the central bank will hold the debt for the next 30 years, and they can keep it there for the next 300 years, because it is our bank. And they can determine the interest rate on it based on something in economics known as the Laffer curve or the yield curve. I will tell you these things in more detail. And that is the reason why I said that I will have the website up, that you can now sit down and go through a ledger and see what I'm saying in solutions and do the research, and you will know I am correct. I was correct back then in 2018. I went around this country and said, listen fellas, the woman said that she was going to reprofile the debt. I told Barbadians, Standard & Poor's, Moody's called that debt default. And I told Barbadians what was going to happen. I couldn't get through. And lo and behold, within a matter of a couple of weeks after victory, the woman defaulted on the debt. And the woman went and restructured the debt. I was the one in 2012 and 2013 that stole my colleagues in cabinet. I stood up against my colleagues and said, we could not get out of the hole by simply raising taxes and cutting expenditure. The same thing Memorial said that you cannot tax your way out of recession. Repeating what they were saying. And then, after I did that presentation to the cabinet, an old professor called me and said, boy, I ain't too sure that you may get the right results with that. And I like to learn, and it forced me to go and study. And I realized this is common sense. If 70% of the government debt is domestic, owned by NIS, credit unions, the commercial banks, insurance company, and pensioners. That's 70%. If I go and restructure and cut that, I destroy my own people. So I said, you know what? This is not what I would do. I will create something called a sinking fund and create a consolidation strategy. It is logic. Every one of you who may have had 5 or 6 loans from a bank or several banks, when the payments from all 5 or 6 loans become too much, you go to a bank and say, bank, let me refinance all of these and pay one loan. The bankers told me I was right. They not mysterious about it. The government had 30 different debts. The average interest rate on all the debts was 9%. All I was saying is, let me find a friend of Barbados who can borrow the money at a lower rate and put the money in an account. Therefore, I will got the interest rate saving, and then when the debt becomes due, pay it out of that fund. You won't have to take no haircuts at all. They won't have to interfere with the NIS. They won't have to interfere with the credit unions. They won't have to destroy the pensioners. I was right then, and I'm right now. But I couldn't get through to Barbadians at the time. But that's life. That is life. But I am not deterred. I am here again to say to you, listen to what I am telling you, because I am not a man who open his mouth and talk without understanding what I am saying. I will not disrespect myself that way as a medical doctor. No. When I walk in a hospital, I must be confident in what I say in order to get you to be confident to trust my medicine. And I am telling you, have confidence in what I'm telling you, because you can go and check it out for yourself. And I want to thank the police officers for giving me a little additional time, given that we have a 10 o'clock, I think, cut time in these situations. So all I can say to you this evening is I tried to be brutally honest with you. And I did not talk partisan politics. I spoke Barbados and what was wrong and what is wrong. And I intend to have prepared and advised and advance to you how you can get to this website. That I will go through every one of the problems that now exist and how we can fix them, how we can organize them, and you can see at your leisure what I am saying, and when you can either agree with me or disagree with me or say, Essie boy, it could be better here and there. I don't know everything. That will most likely be up within 48 hours. And the way we will advise you to get to it is that we will put 3 advertisements in the media, and you will therefore be able to see how to advance to that website, that you can see everything I am talking about and all of the solutions that I am proffering. Then the ball will be in your court to make that decision as to whether or not you are going to repose your confidence in me. And I am telling you that once I get responsibility for the Ministry of Finance and Economics and Economic Affairs and Development in this country, I can get the job done. I was the only minister that sent home nobody from my ministry. Between 2008 and 2018, I sent home not a man. I created jobs on top of jobs on top of jobs for people in this constituency. I know how to do it. And all I can say to you is give me that support and let me get on now to do what I have to do. I gonna soon dead. I 61, I'm 62 years old. And I am saying to you, my time now, I want nothing from nobody. My last child is a medical doctor. I all right. My job now is to use the time that I have and the experience and skills to help Barbados before I go up in Bushy Park. And all I can therefore ask you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, as I sign off, for your fullest support. And I want to wish all of you all the best. And please stay safe from COVID. As a physician, I am concerned that a government will see it fit to call a general election in the middle of a serious pandemic that has the potential of putting lives at risk. I think it is unfortunate. I think it is irresponsible. I think it should not have been done because you have 18 months. You call it 18 months early for what reason, man? We're in a pandemic, man. What are you doing? What are you doing, man? You know, so I rest my case, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you all the best. And good night to the people of St. Patrick's, Packers, Pritchard Hill, Bright Hill, Dolphin Park, and Country View Estates. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, David Eswick is a very nice gentleman. He comes around and socializes with everyone, the young, the old, everybody he does socialize with.
I met David in 2007 when he was Minister of Economic Affairs. He gave me a grant, and honestly, I was very thankful.
David Eswick don't leave out people, don't matter what. I had a couple months there, my feet was hurting me, and my son called him, and David Eswick come right down by me and check my feet and told me I will get back to you. And he did get back to me, and he brings some medication for me. And look, right now we're walking good. I don't want a doctor no more, because he come and assist me. A very good man. Don't want a better person than him.
Always for you.
Always for you.
David Eswick, he was always my representative, and he will be my representative until he says different.
Yeah, I know David Eswick to be a very good man. I met him personally, and the conversations we had really showed me that he's a man that willing to do for anybody that can help bring up themselves the same way. You understand?
Yes, he's always for the constituents, and he's always for I. He's very vibrant, and again, you can talk to him, you can get assistance from him. He's good for the constituency, for Barbados, and for I.
He used to always look out for the people. Like, anytime you get to read, he would never say no. That's one thing for sure I know as growing up. His energy is just a vibe, and I will always vote for you, though. And it's always for you, David, always.
I know David for a long time, man. David always around every shop corner, Bread and Sunbury, even 6 hours. or Ebenezer. Esther never left you out. Give you anything at all. You can't be hungry when Mr. Esther.
David is a proper man. He's good and all for the wrong the fellows. And he was ever a proper man to the fellows in the Constituency.
Every time he lets you come, David all the time. David all the time. David all the time. David all the time.
I know David from the time he was born. He has always been very progressive, knowledgeable, and caring. I, Keith Allen, is always for you, David.
Always for you.
Always for you.
Always for you.
Always for you. Always for you. Always for you. Always for you. Always for you. David Esther. Always for you, David Esther. Jesus.
I know Dr. Esther from time a little boy. His family, everything, he was a good family. He come along poor, but he had pride. He had pride. And from small, he always liked people.
The doc is my man for years. Always was, always will be. You can go to the doc for anything. He'll be there for you.
Yes, I want Dr. Esther to get back in, because he was always nice to us when he was in, not we alone, the whole neighborhood. So he deserved back his seat that he was being robbed of.
You know that. But otherwise, he's good. I know he become a man and doctor. He help people. Also know he's a politician. He help people more.
Because the last gentleman that was running, he never went to nobody's house. No, he never walked around to let you know that he's running. No, nothing like that. So Dr. Esther deserved back his seat.
And vote X for David. Esther, I tell it to everybody. It is Esther, more Esther, more Esther, forward Esther, and back Esther.
Vote for the doc. He is the man for you.
Always for you and always for us. That is enough.